Welcome to the age of organizational effectiveness. This is the podcast that explores stories about organizations and their performance. I'm your host, Charles Chandler. Today, we are at episode 96 of the podcast, and I'm titling it The Freight Market. This episode continues our occasional series, in which we visit a business to try to understand how it works. Today, our guide will be Mandy Barton, who is the president and CEO of Barton Logistics. Mandy shares an interesting story with us that serves as a window into the movement of freight by truck, rail, and air in the U.S. Barton Logistics is a market maker in freight and sits at the intersection between its customers and their supply chains, its carriers, who operate one or more large trucks or other vehicles, and its trading partners. The business is located in Central Texas, but it could have been located anywhere, since it operates primarily as a call center, using the telephone, email, and the internet. Let's pick up the story from there. We're here with Mandy Barton in Bandera, Texas, just west of San Antonio. And Bandera is kind of a rural location. How would you describe, Mandy, Barton Logistics to somebody that had never heard about it?
Oh, we are a freight broker primarily. So a third-party logistics company handles multiple pieces of a customer's supply chain needs.
Okay.
Could be warehousing, could be the end transportation, could be delivering raw materials to assembly, could be taking from assembly to a distribution center. There's a lot of pieces in the supply chain, and a third-party logistics company covers more than one.
And so Barton is a third-party logistics company.
Correct.
So you're dealing with surface freight, basically from trucks.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also...
We do rail.
There's also rail, there's also air.
And we can handle those pieces.
How do you position yourself there?
We do primarily the truckload rail, but there's also full truckload, and there's partial truckload, and there's multiple stops, and there's all sorts of different ways to skin that cat. And then we can secure air freight when needed, and it's just not our normal everyday.
Right. There might be times when something needs to go quickly, and air would be
right. And we
maybe the only way.
We get and dip our feet into warehousing, cross docks, all sorts of things. So it depends on customer needs.
Yeah. So we're here in Central Texas. We're close to Mexico, and there's a lot of NAFTA type traffic there. We're also right off of I-10, which is a lot of east-west and west-east kind of traffic. Is there any particular reason why you're located here, or you just happen to grow up here?
I grew up here, and once you drink the water, you get creative and figure out a way to live here. The quality of life is here, and because we're basically a call center, we can be anywhere. So It really doesn't matter where our customers are.
And of course, the internet also makes it ubiquitous wherever.
We can do this from a mountaintop in the middle of nowhere. So.
Yeah. Tell us how you got started. Tell us the backstory of how did Barton Logistics come to be?
Well, my first job out of college was with a third-party logistics company. I had answered every ad in the Austin American-Statesman. I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Texas at Austin. 3 months later, I still didn't have a job, so I was going to work for a temp agency. I'd filled out all the paperwork when I got hired. I had applied for every job in the paper. I got hired as a manager trainee for a company called Caliber Logistics at the time. FedEx eventually bought them out. And I began there.
And they were in Austin?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was on site at a customer in Austin. They were headquartered in Ohio, and I was promoted a year later and moved to Ohio. So I got cold and really creative, and my full truckload brokers were giving me really bad service. So I actually quit my job to provide the service I wasn't getting as a customer.
So you went and established your own
Yes,
operation.
When you're in your 20s and naive, you think you can do things like start trucking companies.
Right. So you moved from Ohio back to Texas?
Back to Texas, into my parents' dining room. They had just got me graduated and off on my own, and I moved back and took over their dining room for the office.
And that was in Medina?
In Medina. I'm sure they were thrilled.
Yeah. What year was that?
That was 97.
1997, okay. So bring us up to today then.
The next year I moved into, my parents owned the little car wash in Medina, and there was a little storage room on the end. I moved my office into that storage room, so we were on our way up. And then I moved it into a Morgan building in the backyard. And then I finally rented space about year 5.
But how did you get the jobs? You knew something, of course, because you were working for another company that did this kind of thing. But how do you?
My big marketing strategy was just to never quit on the really tough loads, on the ones that everyone else. It was really easy to cover the Houston to Memphis, but nobody wanted the Amarillo to Timbuktu. So when I was the customer or booking freight for my customer that I'd been assigned to by my employer, I was really frustrated with that. So I thought, if I just find one that doesn't quit, even if they can't find a truck, right? If I just know they're still working on it and they're not cherry picking my freight, I'm going to give them all the good stuff too. They're going to get all my Houston to Memphis. So that was my strategy, and it worked.
So these are the carriers. You're looking for carriers that won't quit on you.
Brokers that find the carriers, yes.
Okay, so I think there's still some terms we're not quite understanding here. I looked at your website, and you've got sort of 3 categories. You've got your customers, your carriers, and your brokers, I think.
Brokers are in the middle there.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, the problem with the more sophisticated clients, your big retailers and your big manufacturers, they're all electronic. I mean, they're tendering the freight electronically, and 90% of the capacity in the U.S. is mom and pop trucking companies under 20 trucks. They can't do that electronic data interchange, and so I sit in the middle, and I have the freight tendered electronically. It just dumps on us en masse, and we get on the cell phone individually with these drivers.
So in a sense, you're operating a market, a market between.
And we are a market maker.
Yeah.
We are.
And so that gives you a central position in this whole interchange, I guess you would say. So, you've got the Amazons of the world that are also a market in a way. It's an online market. But then once somebody buys something, it has to be transported.
Right. And what most don't understand is the transport, the actually driving it from A to B, is 10% of it and the easiest part. It's all the information that has to be exchanged.
Mm-hmm. And that's somewhat easier these days by the internet and the fact that you can have interchange protocols between computers and servers and apps and whatever else.
You have to have the humans managing the exceptions, though.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where you position yourself as being the humans that take care of the problems.
Right.
Basically.
And the drivers like to talk to humans.
Yeah. Well, we all like
They're
to
in the
talk to
truck by
humans.
themselves. They like to talk to humans.
Right.
And they may be introverted for the most part, but they like to talk to humans.
Where do you see all of this going?
Well, I see us definitely going to robots, but they're still going to need the humans to direct the robots. So the robots may be driving.
Robot what?
Drivers,
robot
trucks. Yeah.
Okay.
So the driver basically comes into the dispatch center like this and runs 7 or 8 trucks. They're still going to need.
Okay, so you're thinking of a traditional driver would then become the robot controller.
He'll get on the phone.
Mm-hmm. And
or he'll just be out, and people like this will do that. It's one of their options. We've definitely hired some truck drivers here that are in our call center now.
Right. But there are no robot trucks just yet, right?
There are some. Yeah, there's not a lot yet, but it'll come fast when it comes.
But then the capital requirements are high there.
That's for sure.
And the market has to be tested, I guess, in whether that will actually happen.
Yeah, and my bet is it happens. And that's, I'm theoretically going to be disintermediated when it happens, but there's always places, there's always room to go. We're a call center, we can go any which direction.
Sure.
We can pick the robots up on the side of the road when they need fixing. We can do whatever as a call center. So.
And certainly they will break down. And
the robots need humans.
Yeah, they do. But what would be driving this? I guess there's a cost to having a driver in a cab, certainly.
Big one.
And, well, the robot trucks are also not cheap, and the capital cost there and the amortization and all that is not cheap either. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm not planning to be the robot owner.
Right. It just as you're not the truck owner either, currently.
So, but I think light on your feet and adaptability is, we're just going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, I think you're really positioning yourself on the human part of the puzzle there.
And that's my passion anyway.
Yeah.
And that's why I write books and coach and that's my passion anyway.
Right, yeah, I know. I saw that you,
Yeah.
of course, have a book. Tell us the growth story, though, for the next 5 years. Is this sector growing? I would guess it is, but
for sure.
Who do you compete against, in a sense?
Oh, well, there are much larger brokers than us, for sure. The XPO, Coyote Logistics. There's a lot of
folks
much
out
bigger
there.
than us. Yeah, absolutely. And our industry is consolidating. If I don't get 3 calls a week, someone looking to buy the company, it's rare.
But clearly, that's not your goal at the moment.
This is fun. I don't need to. What would I do then?
That's right. Yeah. And I think you have a vision of where you want to go.
I do. And I have a lot of people using this company as a vehicle to improve their lives and the lives of those around us. We're really bringing up a community here, and it's fun.
Yeah. So how big could Barton become?
Well, that's a little bit scary to think about because we could see within a year this building being full also. And I've never been very good at predicting it because I've outgrown 3. This will be my 3rd building if we outgrow this one. Someone else should be in charge of predicting. So, I mean, it echoed when we walked in here, right? We went from 3,000 feet to 15,000, and it just echoed, and we're going to fill it. It's unbelievable.
Well, what's driving that growth, in a sense? Is it because you're positioned at the human connection and there's so many of those problems out there that people are just giving them to you?
At the end of the day, people like to do business with people they like. I certainly do.
Yeah, well, I do too. But how do you project that out? How does the market find out about you and understand that dynamic?
A group here dedicated to bidding. The big bids of the Fortune 100s and we come at it at all directions. We play the spot market every day for our clients, and then we also have a team dedicated to large awards. Mm-hmm. So we're selling, we're making friends, we're just working, we're hustling.
I guess I still don't understand the market. Where do jobs show up? Do they show up on somebody's website and you pull from that, or somebody dumps it on you?
If they have things in their stores or parts in their product that they sell, they have truckload freight. Yeah. So, the market, it's huge. It's everybody. It's anybody that has anything that they sell, a thing, not a service, is a potential client for us.
So any manufacturer out there, GM or any of the auto manufacturers or any of the certainly industrial side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
They have a supply chain.
Heating and air conditioning is big for us. Retail, consumer goods.
And so they have the option of either giving you a load of freight or, let's say, even having a discussion about their supply chain.
Yes, and most of them are so big they're not going to give us a load. We have to be able to handle a substantial amount of freight for them to be bothered with us.
And what are we talking about there? What's the minimum size? 100 trucks or truckloads? Or?
Well, we probably have 12,000 under contract carrier companies. So we look like a big fleet to these guys, and they can flex up and down with their seasonalities. And as long as we've got enough of them, we can keep our fleet busy.
Yeah, this is becoming a little clearer. So there's like 12,000 trucks that know about Barton.
Companies with 1 to 20 trucks, yes.
Mm-hmm. So there may be more than 12,000 trucks.
No, a lot more.
100,000 trucks, let's say, at your disposal or in the market at any given
And it's our
time.
job to know where those guys are domiciled, where they want to get home to on the weekends, where their kids' baseball games are, what nights, it's our job to know, so when the client has the load, we put the right driver.
So how do you keep track of all that? You have a system, no doubt.
We have a software system, and it takes a lot of human capital to manage the exceptions. So I know the robots are coming. There's some things I'm just not worried about right here. I would like to see them Uberize the Walmart appointment process, for example, right? There's some things that are, if you miss the appointment by a half hour, your truck's sitting for a week. That's going to cost a robot or a human. Right. There's some things that are going to need people.
So there's some imperfections in the market there as far as
the driving from point A to point B is 10% of it.
Yeah. And the rest of it is scheduling that appointment.
Scheduling it, receiving the tender, scheduling it for correct days, working out the receiver within a window. The receiver and the shipper are not always on the same page. Sometimes the receiver doesn't want it for 2 weeks. The shipper wants it off their inventory. It's a mess. It's always a mess.
And then what if you're dealing with even something smaller than a full truckload?
It's even more complex.
How do you break that down?
It's hugely complex.
Yeah.
And it's however we have to is the answer. And there's no, if there was a fast answer to that, we wouldn't be needed.
So there's lots of details that have to be taken care of, and lots of human touch that goes on.
Right, and a lot of it can be automated. I mean, the driver's calling in their updates, or just putting a tracker on the truck, and there's a lot that can be automated. And there's so many exceptions, and it's just all day long.
If I'm a shipper and I'm expecting a load, do I have a website where I can go to and see the truck approaching, and it's got a tracker on it and that sort of thing?
In some cases, yes. But you're probably not going and looking unless you're already in trouble. So it's our job to be letting you know ahead of time and proactive. Otherwise, things are just showing up. The stuff is in such mass quantity, unless you're shutting down an assembly line.
And it's always, these days, just in time. As you're trying to have the shipment there just in time to feed into the supply chain.
Theoretically, yes.
Would you say that most manufacturers are doing it that way these days?
Yeah, I think.
Just in time. They're not stockpiling it and
no, I mean, depending on their strategy for long term, different policies that come down the pipe and stuff, we see all sorts of varieties.
But if you had a conversation with them about their supply chain, it would be all about just in time, I guess. And
not really. It's whatever they're facing at the time. They're expecting the tariff to do this, or they're gonna stockpile, or they're not going to, or they're doing layoffs. Whatever's going on at the time. And I've been in business 22 years now, so it changes.
Yeah. So this is June the 4th. 2019, and one thing in the news, of course, is possible tariffs between U.S. and Mexico. How do you view that?
Well, our clients are talking about it. They're expecting it to cost this or that. We don't have a whole lot of direction on what we don't see a slowdown. So
in any case, they'll still have freight.
Yeah, they'll have a little less profit, and they're going to have freight. People are going to buy things. So.
Yeah. So you talked about the full truckload side of it. You talked about rail. You talked about air freight as being all part of a bigger puzzle. Mm-hmm. How do you think about those different pieces?
Well, full truckload is our bread and butter, and
that's
where
your
we
mainstay.
Play most day. Yeah, and it's the bulk of how freight moves in this country. So it's the least expensive. Rail, but rail is so slow. I mean, you really have to have plenty of time.
Like full train loads, even of.
And you have to have 3 or 4 weeks.
And so supply chains don't react well to that.
Not at all, no. But there are some things it works well for.
Yeah, well, bulk coal, I guess, or oil, or.
Right. It's okay if it sits in the rail yard for a week.
Yeah. There are refrigerated rail, I guess, but that's.
It's a little dangerous, yeah.
A little difficult, yeah.
We do reefer freight, so we haul refrigerated over the road.
What about produce from
It's prime season right now. We
Mexico
deal with it every year, yes.
Mexico, California, wherever.
Yes, and so wherever it's happening, the capacity dries up. And all the trucks are going to the more expensive paying freight. And some of the, like the onions and watermelon, they don't need the refrigerated. So things that have been hauling your regular freight all year, the capacity will just dry up if you don't have a great relationship with your trucking company and 9 other months of the year to keep them busy. You can lose freight and lose customers and lose carriers.
Certainly shippers that are investing in refrigerated freight what do they do with it in the winter?
The refrigerated
Trucks.
Well, those refrigerators can also heat, so things that can't freeze and things, and they can be repurposed to a dry van if they need to be.
What do you mean by a dry van?
A van that doesn't have refrigerated, meaning they can haul freight that doesn't need it.
Well,
it's just for a much lower price.
Sure. Yeah. So you've got the cab and you've got the trailer and
if you don't turn on the unit, you can use a tall dry freight.
So how does air fit into this picture to sort of expedite?
You're going to shut down an assembly line and they've got to have it. So and it's extremely expensive, and you've failed if you're using air, or someone in the supply chain has failed if you're having to use air, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what percentage of your business would you say would be rail versus?
Truckload is 98%.
98%, and rail is 1% or something.
1.5%, yeah.
And air is 0.00.
Like almost
something.
Never, yeah.
Almost never, yeah.
We've failed the minute. I mean, it's so expensive. You could run 3 full truckloads for the price of a pallet on air freight. It's nuts.
Yeah. What about, the sort of rural versus urban issue? You've got a lot of small towns and a lot of course, big cities.
Yeah, a lot of that's where your drivers come from.
From the small towns, yeah. And they're sort of independent operators. They own their truck, usually.
A lot of them. Mm-hmm.
Although they may be...
They could be employees. There's a lot of employees, small town, that work for a big trucking company in their town.
Yeah. And they also participate in your system.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And we relate really well to those guys. They would rather haul for us than a computer. So.
Well, it sounds like an amazing story. How does your let's say your books and your coaching, how does that fit into your overall theme that you've got going?
Well, and our vision for this company is that we're making life better for ourselves, for everyone that touches the company. And to do that, we have to be taking ourselves on and growing. Growth of the company requires growth of the people. We can't
Absolutely.
Be stagnant personally. And that's the crux of it. I mean, everybody in the company participates in self-growth and study, and I'm available as a coach. We do a fair amount of that.
So mostly it's aimed internally.
Yes, and I also have an outside coaching practice that's grown just because I've been asked to. I mean, I didn't go to seek that.
Yeah, in fact, I guess I met you at a speaking event.
Yeah. And again, that was a random request. It's
exactly.
Just,
What is it we haven't talked about that you'd like our listeners to know about Barton Logistics or about you?
I guess that a growth of any sort requires taking on yourself and growing internally and personally, and that applies to the greater picture. If my dispatchers aren't growing personally, they don't become floor managers. Everybody has their own journey, and if we're not becoming bigger on the inside, nothing's happening, nothing's growing.
Right. So how many employees do you have at the moment?
We're about 50 right now.
But you're seeing over the next year or two.
We have 5 starting in the training center. It's today the 4th. 5 started this morning in our new training center. I haven't met them yet.
Right.
And there'll be 5 starting right behind them. They'll be in the training center 4 weeks, and that's all we can fit in there.
And we're a little bit west of San Antonio here.
Pulling from Kerrville, Bandera, Medina, Hondo, Helotes, the west side of San Antonio.
Are a lot of them moving physically here, or are they sort of commuting?
A lot. The quality of life is really high out here. It's just been difficult to find a place to make a living. So when someone finds a way to make a living out here, moving here is usually not the problem.
Yeah, in fact,
it's part of the draw.
Less expensive to live out here.
Quite a bit. And when we are having to recruit talent that's not an entry level that we need, and generally the Hill Country is part of the draw.
Well, great. While I was at Barton Logistics, I also had a chance to meet with Chris Wilson, who's the Director of Operations, as well as Jacob Hatcher, who's the IT Manager. Many thanks to Mandy Barton and her staff for welcoming me to their facilities. A link to Mandy's book is available in the episode show notes. And join us next time when we'll again consider the story of an organization and its performance. So long for now.